All right, for this activity, prepare and stain a thin section of dicot angiosperm stem. We have two things to learn. One is the structure of dicot angiosperm stem, and we're going to use this plant, Coleus. Coleus is a landscaping plant that's used for its beautiful colored foliage. And what we did was to take a piece of the stem, and we're going to cut a cross section through it in order to look at the vascular tissue and other tissues that we can see in that stem. Now, when we are using slides in the lab, we may often use a slide that looks like this, where it has a white paper label on it. It has a place where you can see the cover slip is glued on, and we can sometimes even see that there's a piece of tissue on there that's stained a color so that it's easy to see. We're going to do the set of steps today. That is what you need to do in order to make a slide like this. First, we're going to take a very thin section of the tissue. Then we're going to stain it. Then we're going to put it onto the slide. And when we put our cover slip on, we aren't going to be gluing it down permanently like this one. But I think when you have walked through these steps yourself, that it really helps you understand what you're looking at. Because whenever we're using a slide for a compound microscope, whatever organism or piece of an organism we're looking at, it has to have been sliced so thinly that the light from the microscope can come up through it so that you can see all those cellular level structures. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a very simple version of what's called a microtome. A microtome is for making very thin slices of tissue, and you can make slices of tissue if it's frozen, if it is embedded in wax, which is what this piece is, and a professional lab is usually going to embed them in some kind of plastic resin that's very permanent. So we took a piece of Coleus plant stem and set it in here and then poured liquid paraffin in. You just heat it till it melts. And then that piece of stem is now held in here perfectly still so that we can make a very thin slice of it. We're going to do that by turning up the screw on this device. These are parts you can get from Home Depot. And I'm going to do a quarter or a half a turn, and I'm going to use this razor blade to slice off a couple of very thin slices. Now I'm putting them into this dish with 50% ethanol, and what that's going to do is pull some of the water out of the tissue so that the stain is going to adhere to the cells really well. So I can just ignore the wax. It doesn't really matter what happens to it. It needs to sit in the stain for 5 minutes, so I'm going to start my timer. Now I already have some slices that I made previously that I already transferred into this blue stain. So they sit in the stain for another 5 minutes, and then you're going to move them into a dish with the DI water. So what happens when they get the stain on them is that it's going to have a lot of stain. Everything's going to be really dark blue. So we're going to de-stain them. We're going to rinse off some of that extra stain, and we're just going to put them into this DI water. You can see that some of the blue has been rinsed off, and now we're ready to make our microscope slide out of some of our stained thin sections. So we're going to use some glycerol or glycerin, and I have 3 slices, so I want to see which one of them is going to be the best one to look at. And now you do want to get your little slice on here. Ignore the paraffin for now. It'll be easier to put the cover slip on without that, and So it's still a pretty thick slice, even though I tried to make it real thin, and this cover slip isn't sitting on there real well, but it's still going to make it easier to look at it under the microscope. So let's take this over to the microscope and see how those slices look.